Hey there, come closer to the fire for a while, because this story begins with broken clay in the ruins of Nineveh, and with a war so old that the tablets say it happened before Earth had a sky above it or ground beneath it. In 1849, archaeologists working among the buried walls of ancient Nineveh pulled fragments from the library of King Ashurbanipal. The clay pieces were cracked, dusty, and ordinary-looking. The kind of objects a passerby might mistake for debris if no one told him that the oldest storms of heaven were sleeping inside them. They had waited in the Iraqi desert for more than 2,000 years, under fallen brick, under heat, under silence. When scholars finally learned to read the Akkadian cuneiform, the tablets did not open with a gentle creation. They opened with conflict, weapons, fear, strategy, a murdered elder god, a grieving salt sea, a monster army, a young champion who offered rescue only if he could become king of everything. Then, after the war, after chains and captured authority, the world itself was built from what remained. Humanity came even later, made from blood and clay to carry work that the gods no longer wish to bear. That is the darker doorway we are entering tonight. Not a simple tale of heaven shaping earth in peace, but an ancient memory, or myth, or political sacred drama, where creation begins after a cosmic war. If you enjoy slow stories like this, stories where old tablets and dark questions are handled gently by candlelight, like this video and subscribe, so we can keep opening these ancient rooms together. Now let the fire settle. Let the room grow quiet. No need to force sleep. Just listen softly, as if we are standing together in a museum after closing time, while the clay begins to speak. The tablets now rest in the British Museum in London, behind glass, under careful light, in air made steady by modern machines. Visitors pass them every day. Some stop. Some read the label. Some glance once, then move on toward brighter objects, larger sculptures, lion hunts, palace reliefs, things that look powerful from across the room. The creation tablets are quieter, broken, brown, scared. Their power does not announce itself at a distance. You have to lean closer. There are 7 tablets in the series known as the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic. The name comes from its opening words. When on high, it is one of the most important works of ancient Mesopotamian literature, copied, studied, and recited in Babylonian religious life. Priests chanted it during New Year ceremonies, not as casual entertainment, not as a little bedtime tale for children, but as sacred truth, as the story of how the world received its shape and how Marduk became king among the gods. That is the mainstream foundation. Scholars read the Enuma Elish as myth, theology, and political literature. Babylon rose to power, and its patron god, Marduk, was lifted above older divine figures through story. The epic places him at the center of cosmic order. It gives Babylon a sacred argument for authority. This kind of political mythology is not unusual. Cities have always told stories that make their power look older than politics. That reading matters. But the source asks us to notice something that refuses to become completely comfortable. Creation arrives late. The early tablets do not spend their strength on gardens, animals, cities, or people. They move instead through plot, threat, attack, counterattack, command, rank, weapon, battle, capture, and settlement after victory. The language keeps returning to organization. Someone plans. Someone learns of the plan. Someone strikes first. Someone raises an army. Someone appoints a commander. Someone hands over an object of authority. Someone bargains for kingship before agreeing to fight. It does not feel only like mist and metaphor. It often feels like a war remembered by people who believed it mattered. Of course, ancient people described divine things through images their world understood. A weapon in myth can be a symbol. A monster army can stand for chaos. A battle can represent the ordering of the cosmos. Scholars are right to be careful. Clay tablets are not modern field reports. And gods are not soldiers simply because a poem gives them weapons. Still, the specificity lingers. The first 4 tablets move with a sequence, a beginning, a middle, an escalation, and a resolution. The text names figures. It names roles. It describes the transfer of power. It describes a war before the created world. This is the strangeness at the center of the story. The scribe who copied these signs was not doodling monsters for fun. He was preserving a sacred narrative that his civilization treated as foundational. Imagine that scribe. Not at Nineveh first, but earlier, in Babylonian scribal tradition, in a room of clay, at an oil lamp, and murmured recitation. His stylus presses into damp clay. Each wedge must fall at the right angle. The tablet is not a place for careless imagination. It is a vessel of inherited order. A teacher may have spoken the lines. An older copy may have rested nearby. Outside, the city breathed with markets, temples, animals, and canal air. Inside, the scribe copied a war that was said to have taken place before any human city existed. The hand moves. A wedge for a god. A wedge for water. A wedge for command. A wedge for death. Clay remembers pressure better than people remember promises. That is one reason these tablets disturb me. A human body dies. A kingdom burns. A language falls silent. But a tablet can survive long enough to trouble the sleep of people born under electric light. Nineveh itself adds another layer. The tablets were found in the great library of King Ashurbanipal, the Assyrian ruler who gathered texts from across Mesopotamia. He wanted knowledge collected, copied, catalogued, and held under royal power. That library included omens, medical texts, rituals, dictionaries, myths, prayers, letters, and epics. It was a palace of memory made from clay. When Nineveh fell, the city burned, and that fire destroyed much, but baked many tablets harder. It is a strange mercy of history. Flames that ended one world helped preserve its voice. So the war before creation reached us through another ruin. A cosmic war preserved by an earthly war. A tablet of divine battle saved by the burning of a human capital. There is poetry in that, though it is a dark kind. Picture the excavation in 1849. Broken rooms, mounds of earth, men working with baskets and tools, dust rising in the heat. A fragment comes loose from the soil. It is passed hand to hand. Maybe at first it seems like one more piece among thousands, but on its surface are signs that once belonged to a ceremony in Babylon, lines that priests chanted when the year turned and the city renewed itself. The fragment waits to be read. At the time of discovery, cuneiform was still being opened by scholars. The signs were becoming less silent, but the work was slow. Akkadian, written in cuneiform, had to be understood line by line, sign by sign. A broken tablet is not generous. It withholds edges. It loses beginnings. It asks the reader to restore missing words from parallels and grammar. Translating such material is less like opening a book and more like listening to a voice through a cracked wall. Still, the voice came through. It said that before Earth, before humans, before the physical cosmos as we know it, there were waters. Fresh water, salt water, Apsu and Tiamat. From their mingling came the gods. And from the noise of those gods came the first murder. That is where the Enuma Elish begins to move. Not with harmony, but with disturbance. Not with a perfect family, but with generations unable to live peacefully in the same deep. Apsu wants silence. The younger gods make noise. Tiamat, for a while, endures. Then intent forms. Violence is planned. Ea strikes first. The old order is overturned. Already the pattern is there. No creation without conflict. No kingship without seizure. No world without a corpse beneath it. That is harsh, but the telling can remain soft. We do not need to make the ancient violence loud. It is enough to let it stand in the dimness, like a broken tablet under glass. The story is frightening because it is calm. Apsu blanc. Ea answers. Tiamat grieves. Marduk bargains. The cosmos is arranged from the aftermath. If the epic is only political theology, it is still powerful. It tells us that Babylon saw its God as the victor who brought order from chaos. It tells us that authority in that world had to be won, recognized, and written into cosmic history. If the epic preserves something older or stranger, the question grows darker. Why would scribes imagine or remember a war before Earth? Why would creation be built from the remains of a defeated being? Why would humanity be fashioned from the blood of a captured general in clay? Not for freedom, but for labor. We cannot answer yet. We can only open the first door. If you were standing there with me, you might feel how strange the contrast is. The room is calm enough to hear your own coat move. The tablet is still enough to seem asleep. Yet inside those broken lines, gods are plotting. Waters are trembling. Armies are not yet born but already promised. The quiet is almost unfair. It is like finding a battlefield folded into something small enough to rest on a shelf. That is why this story works so well by firelight. It does not rush at us. It waits until we lean closer. The fire beside us lowers slightly. The British Museum grows quiet in the imagination. The visitors have gone. The glass case reflects a thin line of light. Behind it, the Enuma Elish tablets rest in their broken patience, still carrying the first sound of the story. Before heaven had a name, before earth had a floor, before humans had backs to bend under work, there was water, mingled and dark. And in that water, the first family of gods began to make too much noise. Before earth exists in the Enuma Elish, there is no mountain, no field, no roof, no temple wall, no human hand pressing clay. There is water. Apsu, the fresh water, deep and hidden, the source of springs, wells, rivers, and life beneath the land. Tiamat, the salt sea, vast and older than boundary, a mother depth that does not yet know where sky ends and earth begins. They mingle in the darkness before form. Their waters are not scenery. They are beings, presences, powers with names and will. From their mingling, the first generations of gods arise, and with them, the first problem of existence, noise. That is almost comical at first, and that is why I like to pause over it. The first crisis in the Babylonian creation epic is not a meteor, not a dragon, not a throne war with armies already gathered. It is noise. The younger gods are too active. They stir, they speak, they move. They disturb the old waters. Creation begins like a household where the children have discovered drums and the elders just want one quiet evening. But the humor does not last. If you were standing near those old waters in imagination, you would not hear waves in the usual sense. There is no shore yet for waves to touch, no moon to pull them, no sand to receive them. Only depth moving against depth, fresh and salt, parent and parent, old silence and new restlessness. It is peaceful for a breath, and then not peaceful at all, because even before land exists, the story has already learned the sound of unrest. That sound is small at first. Astir, Amyomil, a divine household unable to be still. Apsu cannot rest. The text says he is disturbed by their clamor. Sleep will not come to him. Peace will not return. The younger gods are not merely inconvenient. To him, they are a threat to the stillness of the first order. Their movement means that the old silence is ending, and Apsu wants that silence back. So he forms a plan. He will destroy them. The younger generation will be erased, and the deep will return to quiet. This is where the story darkens. Before humanity, before sin, before kings, before nations, before temples, there is already a father figure deciding that his descendants must die so he can sleep. The old order would rather end the future than endure its noise. Mainstream readers often understand this as a classic myth of generations. Older powers are replaced by younger powers. Chaos gives way to order. Ancient waters resist the movement that will become cosmos. That reading is careful and strong, but the source we are following notices how deliberate the scene feels. Apsu does not accidentally overflow. He decides. He plans. The text gives intent before violence. That matters. A flood can be natural. A plan is political. Apsu confers with his minister, Mummu, and the mood is conspiratorial. There is counsel. There is agreement. There is strategy. It feels less like a cloud forming and more like a council deciding on a purge. The younger gods learn of the plot, and fear spreads among them. The first divine family has become divided before the world has even been built. Then Ea hears. Ea, the wise one, the clever one, the god who later traditions know as a master of deep waters, magic, craft, and hidden knowledge. He does not meet force with force at first. He prepares. He makes a plan of his own. The text describes him using ritual power, a sacred spell, a circle, a sleep poured over Apsu. It is not a wild attack. It is controlled. It is almost surgical in mythic language. Imagine that moment in the first darkness. No ground yet beneath the feet, because ground has not been made. No stars above, because stars have not been fixed. Only waters, depth, and a chamber of intention formed by divine will. Ea draws his circle. He speaks his spell. Sleep moves outward like a dark cloth laid gently over a face. Apsu, who wanted rest, receives rest in the most terrible way. He sleeps. He is bound. He is killed. The language in the source is blunt. He slew him. He took his crown. He established his dwelling upon Apsu. The first victory is also an occupation. That detail should not be rushed past. Ea does not simply defend the younger gods and leave the old order behind. He takes authority. A crown changes hands. A body becomes a foundation. A defeated being becomes the place where the victor lives. Already, the epic is teaching us its dark grammar. Power is not only won by survival. It is installed on the remains of what came before. Apsu becomes a dwelling. In later Mesopotamian thought, the Apsu is the deep freshwater realm connected with Ea, or Enki in Sumerian, the place of wisdom, magic, craft, and hidden life. In the Enuma Elish, that realm is born from conquest. Ea builds his home over the one who tried to destroy him. What had been threat becomes territory. There is an eerie calm after it. The younger gods have survived. Apsu is gone. Ea has power. A new divine household forms in the place of the slain fresh water. And there, in that deep dwelling, a child will be born who later changes everything. Marduk. But not yet. For now, we remain with Tiamat. Tiamat has seen Apsu fall. In the beginning, she did not join the plan to destroy the younger gods. The text presents her as enduring, perhaps reluctant, perhaps sorrowful, perhaps not yet willing to break the family that came from her waters. For a time after Apsu's death, she remains quiet. That quiet is not peace. It is grief gathering weight. The younger gods continue to disturb her. They do not seem to understand, or do not care, that the older sea has suffered. Their movement continues. Their boldness grows. Perhaps their survival makes them louder. Perhaps victory over Apsu convinces them that the old powers can be handled. It is one of those dangerous moments after a first success, when the young begin to believe that consequence has retired. Tiamat change. The salt sea, once mother, becomes commander. The grieving widow becomes the center of a counter-campaign. This is one of the great turns in the epic. Tiamat is not only a monster to be defeated. She is a primordial mother whose grief has become military. That makes her more frightening, and also more tragic. She is not random chaos. She has motive. She has memory. She has loss. If you are hearing this chanted in Babylon during a New Year festival, you might feel both fear and awe. The old sea rising against the younger gods. The mother depth preparing to unmake the order that has wounded her. The danger is not merely outside the divine family. It is born inside it. The text says she creates weapons, or beings of war. Elevenkins, serpents, dragons, demons, fishmen, scorpion warriors, terrible forms with venom, horns, weapons, and battle readiness. We should keep the images soft tonight, more shadow than sharpness, but the specificity matters. The source notices that the text does not simply say she raised monsters. It lists types. It gives the sense of a formed host, a military array of non-human beings made for conflict. These creatures later appear in Mesopotamian art. Cylinder, seals, reliefs, and protective images preserve hybrid bodies. Serpent forms, dragon shapes, fish cloaks, scorpion figures. Some are guardians. Some are dangers. Some stand at thresholds between worlds. Ancient artists carved them carefully, as if they belonged to a recognizable visual language. So when the tablet names Tiamat army, it is not only throwing smoke into the air, it is drawing from a world of known, divine, and monstrous categories. The scribes and their listeners could imagine the host. Then Tiamat chooses a commander. Kingu. He is one of the older gods loyal to her cause. She elevates him. She makes him great among her forces. And then she gives him the Tablet of Destinies. That object is one of the most powerful images in Mesopotamian mythology. The Tablet of Destinies is not just a record. It is authority, fate, command. Whoever holds it holds the right to decree. In stories, stealing or possessing it changes the balance of cosmic power. It is like a royal seal, Alvar charter, a code of reality, and a throne all folded into one sacred object. When Tiamat gives the tablet to Kingu, she is not only appointing a general, she is transferring command over fate. The war is now organized. Ranks are arranged. Authority is assigned. The source emphasizes this because the scene reads with administrative clarity. A commander receives the instrument of command. Forces are gathered. A coalition forms around a political center. This is not a cloud of monsters rushing blindly. It is a campaign. The younger gods panic. Several approach Tiamat army and retreat. They cannot face what she has prepared. The text does not hide their fear. They turn back. They fail. The divine assembly falls into distress. The old order has been slain, but the new order is not yet secure. Ea defeated Apsu through wisdom and magic, but Tiamat is larger, Angria, and now militarized. The family has become a battlefield. It is worth pausing here with the sound of the fire beside us, because the Enuma Elish is often called a creation story, and it is. But by this point, creation still has not happened. We have only waters, generations, conspiracy, murder, grief, military preparation, and panic. The world has not been built, but war has already developed command structures. That is the source of the unease. The epic seems to say that conflict is older than Earth. Not human conflict. Not tribal conflict. Not the little quarrels of fields and borders. A conflict among divine powers over noise, authority, survival, and the right to decide what reality will become. Tiamat waits with her army. Kingu holds the Tablet of Destinies. The younger gods search for a champion. And somewhere within the deep dwelling of Ea, Marduk, the child of the new order, has grown powerful enough to see in this crisis not only danger, but opportunity. The next movement belongs to him, the young god who will not offer himself freely, but will bargain for the cosmos before he risks himself for it. Tiamat waits in the dark like a sea that has learned to think. For a time after Apsu falls, the old salt water does not move against the younger gods. She is grief, not yet army. She is silence, not yet command. The deep around her holds the memory of what has happened. Apsu, the fresh water, has been bound and slain. His crown has been taken. His body has become the dwelling of Ea. The first order has not merely been defeated, it has been occupied. That is one of the loneliest images in the epic. A place that was once a living power becomes the home of the one who destroyed it. The younger gods continue. They move in the new space. They rejoice, perhaps, that they make their own brightness and noise. They may tell themselves that Apsu deserved his end because he plotted first. That is the way victorious beings often speak. They place the first wrong entirely on the defeated, then build a house on the remains and call it order. Tiamat hears them. The noise that disturbed Apsu now disturbs her, but it reaches her through mourning. It is not only irritation now, it is insult. Every sound becomes a reminder that the younger generation survived by killing the older one. Every movement through the deep becomes a footstep over a grave. The text does not make her a simple monster at first. It lets her be a mother, Avidof, an ancient sea that has watched the world before the world become violent. Honestly, that makes her more frightening. A monster that is only evil can be pushed away in the mind. A grieving mother who becomes a monster is harder to dismiss. Her anger has roots. Her war has a cause. The epic may want us to cheer for Marduk, because Babylon needs Marduk to win. But the older water is not empty of dignity. She has been wounded, and wounded depths do not always stay still. Those loyal to her begin to stir. Voices gather near the salt sea. Older beings whisper that Ea has gone too far. The younger gods have grown bold. The death of Apsu cannot remain unanswered. A wrong has been done before creation itself has found shape. The first family of gods has become a divided house, and there is no wall yet strong enough to hold the anger in one room. So Tiamat prepares. The source asks us to notice the military feeling of the language. She does not simply rage, she organizes. She does not simply cry out, she raises a host. She creates 11 kinds of war beings, each one named with enough force to make the ancient listener see them. Serpents with venom, dragons, demons, fishmen, scorpion warriors, hybrid shapes that belong to boundary places, to gates, rivers, deserts, stars, and nightmares. We will not make them grotesque tonight. We can keep them in shadow, as the old artists often did, half seen in the curve of a seal or the edge of a relief. A horn here, a scaled body there, a scorpion tail lifted under moonless water, a fish cloak hanging from a divine shoulder, eyes that belong to no common animal. The point is not horror. The point is readiness. They are made for battle. That is the detail that matters. The text gives them form, but also function. They are not wandering beasts. They are a mustered force. Tiamat arms them with terror. She fills them with poison, strength, and command. The army becomes the shape of her grief. Each creature a sentence written in fear. Imagine that assembly forming in the dark before sky. There is no earth to stand on, so the scene must be imagined as water, depth, and divine space. Shadows move in salt darkness. The old sea turns grief into ranks. A dragon shape coils beside a serpent host. Fishmen wait with faces that seem almost priestly, almost soldierly. Scorpion warriors keep still at the edge, their bodies made from the logic of warning. Each one is made not for life among fields or cities, but for the single purpose of war. The source points to a second kind of evidence as well, not proof in the hard modern sense, but cultural memory and image. Mesopotamian cylinder seals and reliefs preserve many hybrid beings. Dragons, serpent forms, fish-cloaked figures, scorpion men, and guardians of thresholds appear again and again in the visual world of the ancient Near East. Artists did not draw them as a single, careless blur. They gave them recognizable shapes. A listener hearing Tiamat army named could imagine types, ranks, and bodies known from temple art and protective images. This is why the army feels more like an ordered host than a storm of vague monsters. A storm has no commander. Tiamat will have one. She chooses Kingu. Kingu is loyal to her. He belongs to her cause, to the older faction, to the side that refuses to accept the new order Ea has made. She raises him above the others, names him commander, places him at the head of the host. This is not random favor. It is a formal act. Authority moves from Tiamat into her chosen general. Then she gives him the Tablet of Destinies. Pause there. The name sounds quiet enough, almost like something a librarian might dust gently with a soft brush. A tablet. A record. An object with writing. But in Mesopotamian mythology, the Tablet of Destinies is far more than a record. It is the power to decree, the power to fix fate, the right to command the structure of things. Whoever holds it does not merely know what is written. He can make what is written binding. A seal can turn clay into law. A crown can turn a person into a king. The Tablet of Destinies turns command into cosmic order. When Tiamat places it in Kingu hands, she changes the nature of the war. This is no longer only revenge. It is a claim to rule. The older sea has given her general the authority to reorder the future. The war will decide who holds fate. That is a darker thing than rage. Rage burns itself out if nothing feeds it. Command builds a structure around rage and gives it roads. Kingu receives not only honor, but responsibility. He is no longer merely loyal to Tiamat. He becomes the appointed bearer of her future. He holds the object that says her side may shape destiny if victory comes. If you were a younger god hearing this news, fear would not be difficult to understand. It is one thing to face a grieving sea. It is another to face a grieving sea with an organized army and a commander holding the authority of destiny. The divine assembly hears of it, and courage drains from the room. Some gods go out toward her. They do not continue. They see the host, the 11 monster types, the command structure, the terrible readiness of the salt sea, and they return in silence. She is not a symbolic inconvenience. In the logic of the narrative, she is overwhelming. Gods approach and turn back. That is not a small threat. I imagine them returning one by one to the council. No proud speeches. No useful plans. Just faces changed by what they saw. Perhaps one tries to explain and cannot find the right words. Perhaps another sits down too slowly. Divine beings are not supposed to look shaken. That makes the shaking worse. The assembly becomes a room full of glances. Who will go? Who can face her? Who will risk being unmade by the very sea from which the gods once came? No one wants to answer. This is where the Enuma Elish begins to feel less like a simple creation poem and more like a crisis report. Apsu plotted. E struck. Tiamat mobilized. Kingu received command. The younger gods searched and withdrew. Now the leadership structure has failed. The council has a problem no ordinary authority can solve. There is something painfully familiar in this mythic room. A threat grows because no one wanted to face it early. The first killing produced a second war. The victory over Apsu did not end disorder. It moved disorder into Tiamat, where grief became discipline and discipline became an army. Now the gods who benefited from EA action must live with the consequence of it. The old tablets are good at this kind of irony. They do not let power stay clean. Ea is clever, but his success creates a larger crisis. Tiamat is wrong to raise a host for destruction, but her grief is not meaningless. Kingu receives authority, but that authority rests on coming war. The younger gods are frightened, and their fear will soon make them give away their own future to the one who offers to save it. It is also worth noticing the pace of the story. The tablet does not rush from grief to battle in one breath. It lets preparation matter. That is what makes the old war feel heavy. A creature made for battle must be formed. A commander must be chosen. Authority must be placed in his hands. Fear must travel through the assembly before anyone acts. The epic understands that war begins long before the first strike. It begins when grief is given tools, when command is given a name, when a room full of powerful beings waits too long and hopes someone else will decide. And Marduk is not yet king. That is important. He is powerful, yes, but not supreme. He is young in the divine hierarchy, the son of Ea, born in the deep dwelling established over Apsu. The new order has produced a child who carries storm, light, and force. He is not one of the ancient waters. He is not the first authority. He is the rising power of Babylonian theology, waiting for its moment. Crisis gives him that moment. This is one of the most human things in the myth. Power often rises because everyone else is afraid. A room panics, and the person who can still speak begins to rule the room. Marduk sees danger, but he also sees opportunity. He will not simply save the gods out of kindness. He will bargain. Before he faces Tiamat, he will demand that victory change the structure of heaven. A simple hero might say, "I will go." Marduk says, "I will go, if." That if is where kingship begins. The fire beside us shifts in the grate. The broken tablets remain quiet behind museum glass. In the story inside them, the salt sea has armed herself. Kingu holds the Tablet of Destinies. The monster host waits in ranks, and the assembly of frightened gods is about to learn that rescue can come with a price. Marduk enters the council like a storm, still deciding whether to break. The frightened gods have already seen what Tiamat has made. They have seen enough to return without victory, without confidence, without any clean plan. The old salt sea has become commander and mother at once. Kingu holds the Tablet of Destinies. The 11 warrior kinds wait in the dark. No one in the assembly can pretend the crisis is small. This is the moment when a savior can become a ruler. Marduk knows it. He is young compared with the older powers, but the text makes him immense. He belongs to the new divine generation, born in the dwelling of Ea, raised under the shadow of Apsu defeat, full of brilliance, force, and ambition. He is not merely brave. He understands timing. He sees that the council is afraid, and fear can open doors that would remain sealed in calmer hours. He offers himself. He will face Tiamat. He will go against the army that made the other gods turn back. But he does not offer himself for nothing. That is the detail that keeps the scene from becoming a simple heroic tale. Marduk does not step forward like a modest rescuer and say, "Let me help." He names his price. If he defeats Tiamat, the gods must grant him supreme authority. His word must be highest. His command must not be changed. His decree must stand above all others. The crisis becomes a negotiation. Honestly, that feels very ancient and very modern at the same time. Someone finally agrees to solve the impossible problem, and then everyone discovers there is a contract, even in the dawn before Earth. Apparently, leadership comes with terms and conditions, but the humor is small because the price is enormous. Marduk is asking the divine assembly to remake itself. If he wins, he will not simply be thanked. He will be enthroned. The old balance among the gods will end. Babylonian theology will later place him at the summit. And here, inside, the epic, that rise is justified through emergency. He becomes king because only he can face the threat. Mainstream scholars often read this clearly. The Enuma Elish elevates Marduk because Babylon needed its patron god to stand above the older gods of Sumer and Akkad. The story gives political order a cosmic beginning. Babylon is not only a city that became powerful. Its god becomes the one who saves existence, defeats chaos, receives command, and arranges the world. Myth becomes imperial argument. That reading is strong, but the source asks us to keep listening to the texture of the scene, because even political myth needs material to shape. The bargaining is precise. The fear is explicit. The transfer of authority is formal. The gods do not simply admire Marduk. They test him, acknowledge him, arm him, and place the future in his hands. It reads like ceremony, but also like a council under pressure, recording why extraordinary power was granted to one figure. The gods agree. They have no better path. In a calmer time, perhaps they would hesitate. No assembly gives away its power easily. Gods, kings, priests, ministers, and office holders tend to discover deep philosophical reasons why their own authority should continue. But Tiamat army is waiting. Kingu holds fate. The council does not have the luxury of dignity, so they prepare to confirm Marduk. A garment is placed before him. This is one of the strangest and most elegant moments in the epic. Before he confronts Tiamat, he must show that his command changes reality. He speaks, and the garment disappears. He speaks again, and the garment returns. A small test, a huge claim. His word can unmake. His word can remake. That is the authority he has demanded. Not merely strength in battle, but command over form. A warrior can strike. A king can decree. Marduk must be both. The test proves that his speech is not ordinary speech. It is speech that rearranges being. If you were standing in that council chamber, you might feel the air change after the garment returns. Fear remains, but now it has a center. The gods have chosen their champion, and in choosing him, they have begun to submit to him. The room that was full of glances becomes a room facing one figure. That is how kingship settles. First is hope, then as dependence, then as command. Now comes the arming. The text lists Marduk weapons with remarkable care, and the source leans close to that list. He receives a net to entangle Tiamat. He receives winds, powerful invisible forces that he can station and direct. He receives a bow. He receives a mace. He receives lightning. He rides in a storm chariot. He wears armor of terror. The details are mythic, certainly, but they are also functional. The net is for restraint. The winds are for internal disruption. The bow is for the decisive strike. The mace is for crushing force. Lightning is for shock, brilliance, and fear. The chariot gives movement. The armor turns dread into defense. This is not just a pile of impressive objects. It is a plan. The mainstream reading would say the weapons express Marduk identity as storm god and warrior. They symbolize his mastery over the chaotic sea. That is true. But the source hears something like a tactical loadout, an equipment list shaped for one specific enemy. Imagine the weapons being brought one by one. The council is quiet now, but not peaceful. Quiet can be fear with its mouth closed. The net is unfolded first, dark and light at the same time, woven not from cord, but from command. It is wide enough to imagine holding something no wall could hold. The winds gather around Marduk like invisible animals waiting for a signal. They cannot be seen, but their presence changes the room. A lamp would have bent if there had been a lamp. A robe edge would have trembled if there had been a floor and human cloth. The bow is placed before him. The bow carries patience. It waits until the right moment. A bow is not the weapon of a furious rush. It needs distance, timing, aim, release. The mace is different. It is closer, heavier, simpler in its meaning. The mace says that after strategy comes force. Lightning gathers near him, not wild, not wondering, but over the end. The storm chariot waits like weather-given wheels. Armor of terror is placed upon him. That phrase is strange. Armor usually protects the one who wears it. Terror goes outward. Marduk protection is also a weapon. To be seen by him is already to be shaken. The warrior does not only survive fear, he produces it. This is mythic language, but it understands battle. Sometimes the first weapon is the way an enemy feels when he sees you coming. Marduk is now more than a volunteer. He has become a moving concentration of the assembly will. Their fear has been transformed into his equipment. Their surrendered authority has been transformed into his kingship. Their need has been transformed into his legitimacy. That is why the scene feels dangerous even before Tiamat appears. The gods have solved one crisis by creating another possibility. If Marduk wins, he will save them. He will also rule them. The assembly has traded shared uncertainty for centralized power. In the epic, this is good, because Marduk is the hero Babylon needs. A rescuer who asks for supreme authority rarely gives it back. The source keeps that edge alive. This was not only heroic sacrifice, it was the making of a king. Now Marduk prepares to ride. But before he leaves, the text has already done much of its work. It has shown that cosmic order does not arrive gently. Authority must be fought over, granted under pressure, tested by signs, armed with weapons, and carried into battle. Creation, when it finally comes, will be born from the outcome of this armed negotiation. There is no earth yet, no mans, no templas, no scribes, no Babylon, and yet the epic has already imagined politics. A council, a crisis, a bargain, a weapon list, a chain of command, a transfer of authority. This is why the source finds the Enuma Elish so difficult to reduce to simple poetry. Poetry, yes. Theology, yes. Propaganda, yes. But also sequence, procedure, organization, a memory shaped like war. We cannot know what the ancient scribes believed in the exact way we would ask the question. Did they think the battle happened as literal combat? Did they think it was sacred drama? Truth beyond ordinary fact. Our categories may be too stiff for their world, but they treated the story as foundational. They recited it during New Year rituals. They placed it at the heart of cosmic renewal. When Babylon renewed the year, it retold the battle by which order defeated the Salt Sea and Marduk received kingship. That means the war was not a distant curiosity. It was ritual memory. The city returned to it so time itself could begin properly again. That is a powerful thing. Every year, the battle before creation was remembered. Every year, the gods were placed back in order. Every year, Marduk kingship was renewed through the story of danger, bargain, weapon, and victory. The epic is doing more than describing the past. It is making the present stable. That may be why its details had to be preserved carefully. A ritual text cannot be casual with sacred sequence. A missing line matters. A wrong order matters. The net must appear. The winds must be placed. The authority must be granted. The battle must unfold in the right way so the world can be made right again. The scribe copying the tablet may not have thought of himself as inventing. He may have thought of himself as guarding. Guarding words. Guarding order. Guarding the memory of the war that made order possible. In our quiet room, the fire has lowered, and the glow is red around the edges of the wood. Outside, the night has no army, only ordinary darkness. But the story carries us into a darkness before ordinary darkness, where Marduk steps into his chariot and the gods watch him go. He has the net. He has the winds. He has the bow. He has the mace. He has lightning. He has armor of terror. He has the promise of supreme authority if he returns. Ahead of him, Tiamat waits with the older grief of the Salt Sea. Beside her stands Kingu, carrying the Tablet of Destinies. Behind her, the 11 warrior kinds hold their terrible stillness. Behind Marduk, the gods are silent, perhaps ashamed, perhaps relieved, perhaps already adjusting themselves to the new king they have made. The chariot moves. not across land, because land is not yet born. Not through sky, because sky is not yet lifted. It moves through the dark before architecture, before boundary, before the first horizon. Marduk rides into the place where the first great duel will decide the shape of everything that comes after. The tablets are broken, but the sequence remains. The bargain has been made. The weapons have been gathered. The young god has become the hope and threat of the assembly. Now the storm goes toward the sea. Marduk rides into a darkness that has no road. There is no earth beneath him yet, no sky above him, no horizon to divide one direction from another. There is only the old deep, the troubled waters, the salt sea waiting with her army, and the storm power gathered around the young god who has just bargained his way into kingship. The chariot moves through a place before places. That is hard to imagine, and maybe that is why the old epic gives us weapons, voices, challenge, wind, and fear. The mind needs something to hold. A net, a bow, a mache, a chariot, a sea that can speak, a warrior who can command invisible forces. These images are not small, but they help us walk carefully through a world that has not yet become a world. Behint Marduk, the divine assembly waits. Their courage has been placed inside him now. Their fear too. They have promised him supreme authority if he returns victorious. And promises made in fear have a special heaviness. A calm promise can be revised. A desperate promise becomes a chain. The gods have chained themselves to the outcome of this battle, and they know it. Ahead, Tiamat waits. She is not only an enemy. She is the old salt water, the mother depth, the widow of Apsu, the keeper of grief that has learned strategy. Around her stand the 11 warrior kinds: serpents, dragons, demons, fishmen, scorpion warriors, and other shapes, the old scribes, named with care. They are not wandering shadows now. They are a host. They are battle readiness made visible. Kingu stands near her, raised above the others. In his possession is the Tablet of Destinies. That object turns the air around him colder. It is the authority to decree, the right to command fate, the sacred sign that Tiamat has given her, general, not merely an army, but a future. If Kingu holds the tablet and Tiamat wins, then the younger gods do not only lose a battle, they lose the right to define what reality becomes. Marduk approaches. The text says he challenged Tiamat to single combat. That detail matters. A crowd could have met a crowd. The younger gods could have rushed her army in panic. But the epic narrows the crisis into one confrontation. Champion against sea. New order against old depth. Political ambition against wounded motherhood. Storm against salt. If you were standing at the edge of that impossible battlefield, you would not hear birds, or wind in reeds, or the sound of men shifting their weight in armor. Those things do not exist yet. Instead, perhaps, you would hear pressure, the held breath of forces waiting to become sky, earth, season, and law. the silence before a sentence that will make the ground beneath every later footstep. Marduk speaks. He accused Tiamat. He calls out her rage, her raising of weapons, her gathering of monsters, her elevation of Kingu. His challenge is not only insult, it is legal language before battle. He states the charge. He frames the conflict. He makes her war into the reason his violence will become order. Tiamat answers with fury. The text says she trembled. She shook. She was enraged. We can keep the image soft and still feel its size. The salt sea convulses. Darkness ripples. The monster host steers. Kingu holds the Tablet of Destinies, but even he may feel the old water move beneath him. Tiamat is not calm command now. She is grief becoming storm. Then the duel begins. Marduk spreads his net. The net is an interesting weapon against a sea. A blade cuts. A mace strikes. A net surrounds. A net says that the enemy is too large to meet only at one point. It says capture before killing, containment before division. The source lingers on such things because the weapon choice feels purposeful. Tiamat cannot be allowed to spread, flood, or engulf. She must be held. The winds move at Marduk command. This is the heart of the tactic. Tiamat opens her mouth to swallow him, to draw him into herself, to return the young storm to the old deep. At that instant, Marduk releases the winds into her. The evil wind enters. Other winds press. They fill her, hold her open, prevent her from closing around him. The sea that wanted to consume is made unable to contain herself. It is mythic, but also strangely technical. He waits for the opening. He uses the winds inside the vulnerability. He disables before he strikes. Then the arrow flies. The epic does not pause to make the moment tender. It is decisive. Marduk releases the arrow, and Tiamat falls. The salt sea, the mother depth, the war maker, the grief armed with monsters, is overcome. The old water grows still. Let us not make the scene louder than it needs to be. There is a kind of silence after a great thing falls. Even the victor may need a breath before understanding what has happened. The 11 warrior kinds stop. The host sees its queen defeated. The old order has lost its center. Kingu still holds the Tablet of Destinies, but authority without victory begins to feel fragile. Marduk stands over Tiamat, but he is not finished. That is another detail the source finds important. The battle is not treated as complete when the main enemy falls. A real campaign does not end with the duel if an army remains. Command must be broken. Weapons must be gathered. Loyalists must be bound. The instrument of authority must be seized. The text moves through these consequences with almost administrative clarity. Marduk captures the army. The 11 monster kinds are bound, chains close around the beings Tiamat made for war. The serpents, dragons, demons, fishmen, scorpion warriors, and the rest are restrained. No longer a host. No longer a campaign. No longer the moving shape of salt grief. They become trophies, prisoners, signs that chaos has been mastered. The chains matter. A slain enemy is one thing. A bound army is another. Binding says the danger will not simply vanish. It must be held. It must be displayed or controlled. It may still have force. But that force now belongs to the victor order. Ancient Mesopotamian images of bound monsters and subdued chaos carry this feeling. The dangerous forms remain in memory, but they stand under command. Then Kingu is seized. The general who carried Tiamat future is brought down. His elevation ends. The Tablet of Destinies is taken from him. The object that gave command over fate changes hands. Marduk presses it to himself, or wears it, or holds it as the sign that the war has been decided not only by force, but by authority transferred. This is the real capture. The fall of Tiamat wins the battlefield. The capture of the Tablet of Destinies wins the future. Kingu, without the tablet, is no longer the commander of fate. He becomes a defeated officer, stripped of the cosmic sign that made him terrible. Later, his body will be used in the making of humanity. And that detail throws a long shadow backward into this moment. The one who held destiny will become material for workers. Authority will become blood. Defeat will become origin. But not yet. For now, Marduk holds the tablet. The younger gods can breathe again, if gods breathe in such stories. Their champion has done what they feared to do. He has faced the salt sea. He has defeated her. He has captured the monster host. He has stripped Kingu. He has taken destiny. Yet his victory is not innocent. He did not fight only to save them. He fought under terms. The council has already agreed that if he wins, he rules. Now he has won. The promise that was once desperate becomes law. The gods may feel relief, but relief carries a crown inside it. This is how the epic makes kingship, not by birth alone, not by kindness, by crisis, bargain, battle, and possession of destiny. Mainstream scholars read this as the elevation of Marduk, Babylon god, over the older divine order. That reading remains strong. A city seeking imperial importance places its patron at the center of cosmic history. It says, "Our God did not merely rule because our armies were strong. Our God rules because he saved existence from the sea." But the source asks why the steps are so exact. Why name the fear of the gods? Why describe the monster army? Why give Kingu the Tablet of Destinies? Why list weapons? Why preserve the sequence of challenge? Vint, arrow, capture, chain, authority seized. Propaganda can be vivid. Yes. Ritual poetry can be precise. Yes. But the narrative behaves like a remembered campaign, told in sacred language. We do not need to decide yet. The old tablets do not ask for hurried judgment. They ask us to notice. The battlefield after Tiamat is strange. It is not a battlefield on Earth, because Earth has not yet been formed. It is the place where Earth will become possible. The defeated sea lies still in the story. The monster host is bound. Kingu is stripped. Marduk stands with the authority of fate. And behind him the assembly will soon recognize that the young champion has become something more than a champion. He has become the center. But a king must do more than win. He must arrange. The next act of Marduk is what makes the Enuma Elish so haunting. He does not simply leave the defeated Tiamat behind. He turns the body of the old sea into the material of creation. He divides her. He lifts one half to make the sky. He sets the other as earth. The world that later humans will walk upon is not made from peace, but from the remains of the defeated. That thought should be held very softly. According to this text, the ground beneath the feet is a war spoil. The sky above is a war spoil. Creation is victory organized. The fire beside us burns low and steady. In the story, the battle has ended, but the work has only begun. Marduk holds destiny now. The sea is still. The army is chained. Kingu is a prisoner. The gods wait for the victor to make good on his promised kingship. The storm has defeated the sea. The old scribe does not tell us whether the gods cheered. Perhaps he did not need to. Relief can be very quiet when it follows terror. A council that has survived may first listen to its own silence, then remember the price it promised. Now the storm will build a world from her silence. Creation begins like an act of division. That may be the most unsettling part of the Enuma Elish. The world does not appear because a peaceful voice calls it gently from nothing. It is not sung into being as a garden. It is not shaped from untouched clay beside a quiet river. It is made after battle, from what remains of Tiamat, the defeated salt sea. Marduk looks upon the fallen deep, and the battlefield becomes a workshop. The epic says he split her body in two. One half he raised to make the sky. The other he set below to make the earth. The image is vast, and it asks us to imagine creation not as birth, but as arrangement after conquest. Above, a lifted canopy. Below, a founded ground. Between them, the space where later winds, stars, temples, cities, animals, and humans will take their places. If you were standing with me inside this old image, you might feel how quiet it becomes after the division. The old salt water is no longer an army, no longer a mother with grief, no longer a voice shouting against Marduk. She has become material. The defeated being becomes structure. The body that threatened to swallow order is turned into the boundary that makes order possible. This is not a gentle theology. It says that the world rests upon a conquered power. The source lingers there because the implication is enormous. Earth itself, in the logic of the text, exists because one faction won a cosmic conflict. The world is not neutral ground. It is post-war settlement. The sky is not a clean roof. It is half of a defeated god lifted into place. The earth is not merely soil. It is the other half made stable under command. Mainstream scholarship reads this as the triumph of order over chaos. Tiamat, the salt sea, represents the dangerous, undifferentiated deep. Marduk, the storm warrior and patron of Babylon, defeats chaos and creates an ordered cosmos. This is a powerful mythic pattern found in many traditions. The warrior god overcoming the sea, dragon, serpent, or chaos, monster, so life can exist. That reading works. But the source asks us to feel the story more literally for a moment, not as proof, but as atmosphere. The text describes a body used as construction material. It describes post-war organization. It describes authority seized, prisoners taken, and then cosmic engineering performed by the victor. It is a creation story. Yes, but creation comes as a consequence of war. Victory first. World second. That order matters. After dividing Tiamat, Marduk arranges the cosmos. He fixes the stations of the gods. He marks the places for the great gods. He establishes the year. He sets up the months. He makes the stars into signs. He orders the moon. He gives boundaries. He places bars and guards so Tiamat waters cannot break loose again. The epic is not content with a dramatic battle. It moves into administration, measurement, and maintenance. A true king, in this old imagination, does not only defeat enemies, he organizes space. He tells every power where it belongs. Imagine him with a cosmic map that is not yet drawn because maps need Earth beneath them. The stars are like officials waiting for posts. The moon receives its path. The year receives its bones. Night and day begin to become readable. What had been restless depth is turned into a schedule. Time itself starts behaving. There is something almost bureaucratic about it, and I mean that in the most ancient and sacred way. The Babylonians loved order, lists, omens, astronomical observation, calendar, ritual sequence, kingship, and record. Their creation epic reflects that mind. Marduk wins the war, then makes a system. This is where the old warrior becomes the administrator of reality. The monster host remains bound. Kingu remains captured. The Tablet of Destinies rests with Marduk. The gods who were once frightened now receive stations. Each power must know its place. The cosmos is no longer a family quarrel in dark waters. It is a hierarchy. The surviving gods are assigned duties. At first, perhaps, victory feels like relief. The great threat is gone. The salt sea is divided. The sky is above. Earth is below. Boundaries hold. The younger gods no longer tremble before Tiamat army. Marduk sits at the center of recognition. But order has a cost. Someone must maintain it. That is another truth the epic understands. A world is not made once and then left alone. Canals silt. Temples need offerings. Calendars require watching. Stars must be read. Fields must be watered. Gates must be guarded. Even a cosmic order needs labor. After the grand victory comes the quieter burden of upkeep. The gods begin to complain. This is almost darkly funny, because the story has gone from primordial waters to murder, from monster army to single combat, from the making of heaven and earth to a familiar workplace problem. Someone has to do the maintenance, and those assigned to it do not enjoy the assignment. The divine beings groan under the labor of creation. They want relief. If that sounds familiar, it is because the same pattern appears in the Atrahasis epic. There, the Igigi gods dig canals and maintain the world for thousands of years until they rebel. They burn their tools. They surround the dwelling of the higher god. Their exhaustion forces the creation of humanity as substitute labor. In the Enuma Elish, the sequence is shaped differently around Marduk victory. But the labor problem returns. Gods do not want to work forever. The source sees in this repetition something important. Two separate Akkadian traditions preserve a similar structure. Divine beings labor. They protest. A new species is created to bear the burden. Humanity enters not first as beloved child, but as workforce. In Atrahasis, humans replace the canal-digging gods. In the Enuma Elish, humans are created after the cosmos is arranged, to relieve the gods of maintenance. Different stories. Same yoke. Mainstream interpretation says this reflects temple theology and social order. Humans serve the gods through offerings, lavor, and ritual because the gods created humans for that purpose. The myth explains why temples need food, why priests perform daily service, why kings build sanctuaries, why human society must support divine households. It is sacred ideology rooted in Mesopotamian city life. That is a careful and strong reading, but the source hears the phrasing with unease. It asks why creation of humanity is linked so directly to labor transfer. Why divine work becomes human work. Why the gods who once maintained creation are freed by making servants from blood and clay. Why the battlefield victory leads eventually to the manufacture of workers. The world has been made from a defeated god. The workers will be made from a defeated commander. The logic is consistent. War spoils become structure. Prisoner blood becomes labor. Victory becomes administration. Administration demands workers. The darkness here is not loud. It is cold and orderly. No one rages when humanity is proposed. The decision is practical. The gods need relief. Marduk has authority. Kingu is available as captured material. Clay is available as earthly substance. A new being can be made. Before that creation happens, pause with the world newly formed. The sky is young. The earth is young. No human foot has pressed dust. No field has been planted. No city wall has risen. No scribe has complained about a difficult line on a tablet. There is only the world after war, arranged but not yet inhabited by us. The air, if there is air, carries the memory of salt. The boundaries still feel fresh. The stations of the gods are newly assigned. The defeated army is chained somewhere in the cosmic order. Marduk looks over what he has made. He is victor now, king by bargain and battle, holder of the Tablet of Destinies, organizer of heaven and earth. His kingship is not merely personal glory. It is the axis of the new order. Babylonian theology will later return to this again and again, because if Marduk arranged the cosmos, then Babylon, his city, stands near the center of cosmic meaning. This is why the political reading matters. The Enuma Elish is not only about ancient imagination, it is about power. When Babylon recites this story, it says that its god defeated the primeval sea, seized destiny, made the world, assigned the gods, and created humanity to serve divine order. That is a breathtaking claim for a city to place behind its own authority. But the source asks whether propaganda and memory can exist together. A king can use an old battle to justify a new throne. A city can reshape inherited myth to serve empire. A ritual can preserve a memory even while turning it toward political purpose. The tablets may be theology, but theology can carry older material. We do not have to decide whether every weapon is literal or every monster is symbolic. The story works because it refuses to be small. It is political and cosmic. It is mythic and procedural. It is poetic and organized. It is a creation story that behaves like an aftermath report. Marduk establishes the cosmos, and then the cosmos needs workers. That is the bridge to humanity. The new world is not yet peaceful. It is only ordered. Peace and order are not the same. Order can be heavy. Order can place burdens on backs not yet born. The gods want freedom from the work required by the order they have won. They want someone else to carry the yoke. So the council gathers again. Not in panic this time, but in calculation. Kingu, the defeated general, is still captive. He once held the Tablet of Destinies. He once carried Tiamat authority. He once stood as the commander of the army that almost ended the younger gods. Now his authority is gone, and his body, his blood, his life substance will become the source of something new. Humans have not yet appeared, but the materials of our origin are already being chosen. Clay below, defeated divine blood, a purpose already waiting. The fire in our room gives a small crackle, and the sound feels almost too ordinary after such vastness. Perhaps that is fitting. The old epic moves from cosmic war toward the ordinary human fact of work. From Tiamat body to the sky. From Tiamat body to earth. From Kingu blood to people. From divine exhaustion to human labor. The world is made. The gods are tired. The prisoner waits. And beneath the newly lifted sky, the first shadow of humanity begins to form. Humanity enters the Enuma Elish after the sky and earth have already been made. That detail matters. We do not arrive in the first light. We do not arrive when the waters first mingle. We do not arrive when the gods are born. We do not arrive when Apsu falls, or when Tiamat raises her army, or when Marduk takes the Tablet of Destinies into his own power. We arrive later, after victory, after division, after the world has become a place that needs maintenance. The gods have been saved from Tiamat, but now they are tired. The cosmos has stations, boundaries, paths, duties, and order. Order is never weightless. It must be held. Someone must keep the sacred houses supplied. Someone must maintain the rhythms. Someone must serve the divine households. Someone must carry the burden that comes after creation. The gods do not wish to carry it. That is the uncomfortable hinge of the story. Creation has been won by battle, and now labor must be assigned. Marduk, now victorious, now holder of fate, now promised supreme authority by the assembly, gathers the gods and gives his solution. A new being will be created, a servant species, a worker who will bear the labor of the gods, so that the divine assembly can rest. It is a dark beginning for humanity, not because it is loud or cruel in an obvious way, but because it is so practical. The gods do not appear to weep with love at the thought of humans. They do not first imagine poetry, prayer, family, memory, or longing. They imagine relief. They imagine the work passing from their own hands into ours. Honestly, that may be the most unsettling thing in the whole epic. We are not born from the peace after war. We are born from the administrative problem that follows victory. The source asks us to hear this carefully. In the Enuma Elish, humans are made because the gods want freedom from work. In the Atrahasis epic, a related Akkadian tradition, the pattern is even clearer. The Igigi gods dig canals and labor for thousands of years. They grow exhausted. They burn their tools. They surround the dwelling of the higher god. Their rebellion forces a council, and the solution is to create humans to take over the toil. Two traditions, different settings, same deep structure. Divine labor becomes human labor. A burden is transferred. A worker species is made. This does not need to be read literally to be powerful. Mainstream scholars see in this a mythic explanation for temple service and human duty. Mesopotamian religion imagined gods as beings who needed houses, offerings, rituals, food, incense, music, and order. Humans existed to serve them. The myth places the daily labor of priests, farmers, scribes, brewers, bakers, and canal workers inside a cosmic frame. That reading is strong, but the source keeps returning to the strangeness of the materials. Kingu is brought forward, the defeated general of Tiamat army, the one who once held the Tablet of Destinies, the one who carried authority for the losing side, now stands stripped of power. He was elevated by Tiamat. He commanded her host. He held fate in his hands. Now fate has been taken from him. His command has ended. His cause has failed. And from him, humanity will be made. The text says his blood is used. Blood in the ancient world is not merely fluid. It is life, kinship, force, identity, the source of vitality, the thing that marks belonging and continuity. To say humans are made from Kingu blood is to say that some part of the defeated divine rebel becomes part of us. That is not a small claim. The gods do not choose a pure, innocent source. They choose the captured commander, the one blamed for Tiamat war. The source describes it with deliberate darkness. We are made from the blood of a defeated war leader and clay to serve as replacement labor for tired gods. Clay is the other material. Clay belongs to the earth, to mud, to riverbanks, to potters, bricks, tablets, bowls, and walls. Clay is humble and useful. It takes shape under pressure. It can hold a wedge mark for thousands of years. It can become a vessel or a record. In creation language, it becomes the earthly base from which the human form is fashioned. So here again, the ancient formula returns. Divine blood, earthly clay, mixing, a new being. The mainstream reading hears sacred anthropology. Humans are earthly because they are clay. Humans contain divine residue because they come from God blood. Humans are restless, clever, rebellious, and burdened because their source is not simple. The myth explains why we serve the gods and why we also carry something dangerous inside us. The speculative reading hears a memory of combination. Higher essence joined to earthly material. A being made from two sources. Not equal to the gods, but not merely animal. A worker with intelligence, capacity, and unease built into its origin. We cannot be sure. But as a story, it explains a great deal. If humans carry Kingu blood, then we are born from the losing side of a cosmic war. Not from Marduk victory alone, but from the defeated command that opposed him. That makes the human condition strange. We serve the gods who won, while carrying the blood of a god who lost. We live under an order made by Marduk, on an earth made from Tiamat, with life drawn from Kingu. No wonder we are complicated. No wonder we obey and rebel. No wonder we build temples and question the heavens. No wonder we work the fields and dream beyond them. The ancient epic may not mean any of that in a modern psychological sense, but the image has power. A species made from war cannot be entirely peaceful. A species made for labor cannot be entirely free. A species made from divine blood and clay cannot be entirely content with mud, or entirely at home among gods. The first human in this story does not step into a garden. The first human steps into a job. The yoke is already waiting. That word, yoke, appears strongly in the parallel tradition of atrahasis. Let the human carry the yoke. Let the worker bear the toil. The yoke is a tool of burden, a thing placed across shoulders, a sign that strength has been claimed for someone else's purpose. It is agricultural and political at once. It belongs to oxen, fields, labor, obedience, and command. In sleep story language, we can let the image become quiet. A newly made being stands beneath the young sky. The earth below is still fresh from Tiamat body. The air has not yet heard generations of human voices. The gods look on, perhaps relieved. Marduk has solved the labor problem. Kingu is gone into the mixture. Clay has taken form. Blood has become breath. The worker opens his eyes. No one asks what he wants. That silence is the sorrow. Purpose arrives before memory. Duty arrives before choice. The first human has no childhood behind him, no ancestors to tell him why the world is shaped this way, no old mother to whisper that work is hard, but dawn is kind. He is made into a cosmos already full of winners, losers, station, of chain, and assignments. The story does not need gore to be dark. It is dark because it is orderly. The divine council solves a problem by making another kind of being responsible for it. This is where the source draws the line back to Atrahasis. There, the Agigi gods are the laboring class. They dig canals, maintain the land, and finally rebel. Their tools burn in the night. Their anger surrounds the dwelling of the chief god. The divine council is forced to listen. Enki or Ea proposes creating humans from clay and divine essence, so the gods may rest. The details differ, but the structure rhymes. Gods labor. Gods refuse. Humans are made. Labor descends. The source asks why separate Akkadian texts preserve the same labor replacement idea. Mainstream scholarship says humans serve divine needs and myths reflected the social order around them. That is true and important. But the source asks whether social order can also preserve older memory. A memory of beings who worked before humans. A memory of rebellion among those beings. A memory of human creation as a practical solution, not a sentimental one. The tablets do not force an answer. They simply repeat the burden. And repetition matters. Think of the world of Mesopotamia itself. Canals do not dig themselves. Fields do not water themselves. Temples do not feed themselves. Clay tablets do not copy themselves, though every tired student probably wished they did. Cities are made from repeated labor, morning after morning, season after season. A myth that says humans were created to work would have felt less like insult and more like explanation. The worker at the canal might hear the story and think, yes, this is why my back aches. The priest might hear it and think, yes, this is why offerings matter. The king might hear it and think, yes, this is why order must be maintained. The scribe might hear it and write the words into clay, because a burden becomes easier to carry when someone says it was woven into the beginning of things. But for us, sitting by the fire thousands of years later, the same myth has another edge. If humanity was made to free the gods from labor, then human history begins as an aftershock of a war we did not fight. The winners make the world. The prisoner gives blood. The clay receives form. The new species carries the work. It is a quiet but devastating origin. And in that origin, there is a strange explanation for human restlessness. We are made to serve, but we do not only serve. We are made from clay, but we look at stars. We are made from the defeated, but we build our own victories. We are made for work, but we make songs while working. A being made only for labor would need hands and obedience. Humans have those, but also memory, grief, imagination, stubbornness, and the terrible habit of asking why. Perhaps that is the Kingu blood in the mythic sense. A defeated command still whispering inside the worker, Perhaps it is only the Sumerian and Babylonian way of explaining why human life is both sacred and difficult. Either way, the image remains. Blood and clay, war and work, creation and burden. The gods are relieved. The humans begin. The story now widens one last time, because the Enuma Elish is not the only ancient memory of a war before the present world. Other cultures speak of divine battles, older beings defeated, gods cast down, and cosmic order built after conflict. Scholars explain these as succession myths and metaphors. The source asks whether the convergence is more than coincidence. The new human worker stands beneath a sky made from Tiamat. The earth beneath his feet is the other half of the old sea. Somewhere in him is Kingu blood. Somewhere above him, Marduk has become king. And from this dark beginning, every later question about myth, memory, propaganda, and history begins to rise like smoke. Now we return to the tablets behind glass. After all the waters, all the battles, all the winds, all the bargaining, all the chains, and all the blood and clay, the Enuma Elish becomes quiet again. The storm chariot is gone. Tiamat is no longer moving in the dark. Kingu no longer holds the Tablet of Destinies. Marduk sits in the center of the new order. Humanity has entered the story as labor. And, in the modern museum, the clay does not shout. It waits. That waiting may be the most honest ending for a text like this. Mainstream Assyriology reads the Enuma Elish as Babylonian creation theology and political myth. Babylon rose to power, and Marduk, its patron god, was raised above older, divine figures. The epic makes that elevation cosmic. It says Marduk did not become supreme because one city grew strong. He became supreme because he saved the gods from Tiamat, seized destiny, created heaven and earth, assigned the stations, and made human beings to serve the divine order. This reading has strong evidence. The epic was tied to ritual. It was recited in connection with the new year. It renewed Babylonian kingship and divine order. It reflects political theology, city pride, sacred hierarchy, and the ancient habit of making earthly power appear rooted in heaven. We should not brush that away. Ancient scribes were not modern reporters hiding a secret file under poetry. They lived in a world where myth, ritual, kingship, memory, astronomy, and theology belonged together. A story could be true without being factual in our narrow sense. A battle could be cosmological, ritual, political, and poetic all at once. If we force it to be only one thing, we may make it smaller than the scribes intended. And yet, Shofu, the source asks why the story feels so strangely organized. The tactical details keep returning. Apsu plan destruction. He learns of the plot and strikes first. Tiamat raises an army. 11 war beings are named. Kingu is appointed as commander. The Tablet of Destinies is transferred to him. The gods approach and retreat in fear. Marduk negotiates supreme authority before fighting. Weapons are prepared for specific functions. The net, the winds, the bow, the mace, lightning, the storm chariot, armor of terror. Marduk uses the winds when Tiamat opens her mouth. He captures the army. He binds the host. He seizes Kingu. He takes back the Tablet of Destinies. Then the world is arranged from the remains of the defeated. After that, labor is assigned. Then humans are made from Kingu blood and clay. This is not a loose collection of images. It has sequence. It has cause and consequence. It has politics. It has command. It has aftermath. That does not prove literal history, but it explains why the source calls the text difficult to dismiss as mere decoration. The source also places the Enuma Elish beside Atrahasis. In Atrahasis, the Agigi gods dig and labor for thousands of years. They burn their tools. They surround the dwelling of the high god. The council responds by creating humans from clay and divine essence, so the gods may rest. There is no Tiamat battle in the same way, but the labor transfer is familiar. Divine workers refuse. Humans are made to carry the work. Two Akkadian traditions. Two different narrative frames. One recurring pattern. The mainstream explanation is that this was a central Mesopotamian theological idea. Humans existed to maintain the gods through ritual and labor. The myths sacralized temple economy and social order. That is reasonable. It may be enough. But the source widens the view. Greek mythology remembers the Titanomachy, a war between the Olympians and the Titans before the current order of gods becomes stable. The defeated Titans are cast down. Norse tradition remembers wars among divine groups, including the Aesir and Vanir, before cosmic order settles into its familiar shape. Vedic texts preserve conflicts among divine beings over sovereignty, order, and cosmic power. Across cultures, the pattern appears again and again. Older beings, younger gods, war before the present order, losers bound, cast down, exiled, or transformed. A new cosmos built after conflict. Standard scholarship explains these as succession myths, natural metaphors, social reflections, and the human tendency to imagine history as family struggle. That is wise. Every generation knows conflict between old and young. Every society knows power passing from one ruling house to another. Storms defeat seas. Spring follows winter. Kings replace kings. It is natural that myth would make cosmic war from human experience. Still, the convergence has an emotional weight. Why do so many cultures remember a war before the world as we know it? Why do so many places present order after a defeat? Why are the losers bound beneath the world, under mountains, in deep places, in darkness, in exile? Why does humanity so often appear late, after the gods have already fought? These questions do not prove the source's boldest claims. They keep the candle burning. The tablets themselves are real. This is not a hidden rumor. They can be studied. Their translations are published. Scholars debate difficult words, broken lines, and interpretations, but the material exists. The clay was excavated. The signs were copied. The epic was known in ancient Mesopotamia and treated with ritual seriousness. What remains uncertain is meaning. Were the scribes writing political theology? Yes, very likely. Were they shaping myth into a justification for Babylon and Marduk? Yes, very likely. Were they also preserving older story material, inherited from deep Mesopotamian tradition? Also likely. Could that older material contain distorted memories of events or beliefs far stranger than modern categories comfortably allow? That is where caution and wonder sit together. We cannot step across the gulf and ask the scribe what he thought he was doing. We can only read the wedge marks. We can compare versions. We can study Akkadian grammar. We can look at rituals, templates, royal ideology, and parallel myths. Then, if we are honest, we admit that the tablets still feel larger than our labels. They preserve a universe in which creation begins after violence. They preserve a world made from the body of the defeated. They preserve humans made from the blood of a captured commander. They preserve labor as the reason humans exist. They preserve a memory of divine beings frightened, bargaining, retreating, arming, and organizing after war. That is a difficult origin. A soft story would tell us that we were made in calm, placed on gentle ground, and invited to rest. The Enuma Elish gives a harder image. The ground itself is aftermath. The sky is aftermath. Human labor is aftermath. Our work begins because the gods wanted rest after ordering the spoils of war. There is something darkly familiar in that. Many human societies begin their official stories after conquest. A kingdom is founded after a battle. A city is named after a victory. A law is written after disorder. A throne becomes sacred after someone else is defeated. The Enuma Elish takes that human pattern and lifts it into the beginning of everything. Maybe that is all it is. A cosmic mirror of empire. But if so, it is still one of the most powerful mirrors ever pressed into clay. The source title asks about a war the Anunnaki lost before coming to Earth. The Enuma Elish does not use every modern phrase that later interpreters place around it. And we should be careful with labels. But the basic dark structure is there. Divine factions clash before the world is ordered. One side falls. Authority changes hands. The defeated are bound or repurposed. The earth itself arises from the fallen sea. Humanity is made afterward to serve. If we call them gods, the story is myth. If we call them powers, the story is theology. If we call them factions, the story begins to sound like political memory. If we call them something else, the room grows colder. But perhaps the best answer tonight is not to choose too quickly. Let the tablet keep more than one meaning. Let Tiamat be the sea and the enemy, and the grieving mother and the defeated past. Let Marduk be the storm and the king and the city of Babylon rising in divine form. Let Kingu be the rebel general and the source of human restlessness. Let clay be clay, and also the substance that takes shape under pressure. Let blood be blood, and also the life of something older entering the human story. Let humanity be servant, worker, singer, builder, mourne, questioner. All of these can be true in the deep language of myth. Now the museum is closing in the imagination. The visitors move away. Their footsteps soften. The lights stay gentle over the glass. A guard passes, perhaps thinking of supper, not of Apsu, Tiamat, Kingu, or Marduk. Outside, London traffic moves under a sky the epic would call the lifted half of a defeated sea. Beneath every footstep, the ground holds the other half. Of course, we do not live by that cosmology now. We know Earth through geology, stars through physics, life through biology, and myth through scholarship. Yet old stories do not vanish just because we have new instruments. They change rooms. They leave temples and enter museums. They leave ritual and enter translation. They leave chanting priests and sit quietly in books, waiting for another mind to ask why they were preserved so carefully. Somewhere in those wedge marks, a scribe wrote of a time before Earth. He wrote of waters that became parents. He wrote of noise that became murder. He wrote of grief that became an army. He wrote of a young god who bargained for kingship. He wrote of weapons, winds, chain, and the Tablet of Destinies. He wrote of a world made from a fallen body. He wrote of humans made from blood and clay to carry labor. 3,000 years later, we are still reading, still arguing, still wondering whether the ancient scribe was preserving myth, propaganda, memory, or something that does not fit neatly into any of those words. The fire beside us is low now. The room is warm. The war before Earth can return to the clay. Let Apsu sink back into the dark, fresh water. Let Tiamat rest as sea and sky and earth in the old imagination. Let Kingu release the burden of destiny. Let Marduk sit in his hard-won kingship. Let the first human worker lay down the yoke for one quiet night. Let the British Museum glass grow dim. Let the broken tablet sleep. And let the question remain, not sharp enough to keep you awake, only soft enough to follow into dreams. What did the ancient scribes believe they were remembering? A myth, a ritual, a war, a beginning made from defeat. The clay does not answer in a hurry. It never has. Good night.